everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. I am your host, Kelton Hell.
And I'm Spencer Simpson, your other host. And this week, Kelton and I challenged each other to build commander decks using underplayed commanders. Specifically, commanders that have under 500 decks on EDHRec.
It was a really fun challenge. I had a whole lot of fun with this.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. I will say it was kind of hard to find a commander, frankly, that I was really excited to build. I did land on one that I was excited to build, but it was kind of tough.
Yeah, 500 is actually a smaller number than you think. There's a really great EDHRec series of articles called the 600, where every time a new set comes out, I can't remember the writer's name, but they go through every new commander, every legendary creature in the set, and predicts whether or not there's going to be 600 or more. I didn't know where the number 600 came from. That kind of feels a little bit arbitrary anyways. So for our challenge specifically, we chose the number 500 just because it's a nice round number. And yeah, 500 is actually very difficult to find commanders that haven't been built to that degree yet.
Yeah, and I feel like most of the ones that were, to be completely frank, were kind of bad. Like, especially as you got to more colors, right? So, as you got to 3 and more, it was typically, first of all, there were not very many in 4 and 5 colors that weren't just partners.
Yep.
And then in 3, it was mostly partners, and then the original Elder Dragons, which are
pretty bad.
They're subjectively pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like, most of them, for those who don't know, most of them are big 7-mana dragons that cost a lot of color pips that are usually 7/7s, and that's kind of the origin of Elder Dragon Highlander. You're playing one of the Elder Dragons, but they all have not a cumulative upkeep, but an upkeep cost. So that obviously we weren't going to build those. Those are just not great. If you disagree, please let us know in the comments and tell us why the Elder Dragons are good.
Are super cool. Is it true that that's where commander damage comes from? That it's 3 hits from an Elder Dragon?
That's what
damage?
I always assumed, to hit 21.
Yeah. A little fun fact for you. So we actually did end up finding quite a few. We've kept some on the back burner in case we want to do another challenge like this again. But we actually chose 2 from the same set for this challenge.
Yeah. And so just for some more context, we decided to do from Lord of the Rings and earlier set releases, because the more recent ones obviously are going to have way fewer decks. Lord of the Rings is still pretty recent, but that felt like a good cutoff because there were a lot of cool legendary creatures in Lord of the Rings that you can build around.
Tons of decks built from Lord of the Rings characters. I mean, just tons of them. It was really a fun set to build around.
Yeah, and like Kelton said, so fun that we both picked one from Lord of the Rings. Kelton, do you want to tell us about yours?
I do. I want to tell you about it because it's actually been one of my pet decks for a while. This is Grima Saruman's Footman, and it is 2 blue-black for a 1/4 human advisor. Grima Saruman's Footman can't be blocked, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then that player puts the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of their library in a random order.
That's a wall of text. Do you want to give us a TLDR on that?
He's a 1/4 that can't be blocked, and when he deals combat damage, you get to cast the first instant or sorcery from their deck.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Kelton actually had this deck as a deck, had this for a while as a deck that he played, and it's actually way scarier than you would think, especially in the way he had it originally built.
And I've rebuilt it for this episode to be a much more casual deck and to be a little more focused on just some of the things that Grima wants to do. So
yeah, absolutely. I think we both built ours to be a little bit lower power, just to be played at like pretty casual tables, because they are both pretty fun strategies. Mine is not nearly as interesting, I think, of a strategy.
It just has less text. It's not that it's not interesting. It just has less text.
Yeah, you're right. It just has less text. I chose to build around the Gaffer, which is also from Lord of the Rings. It is 2 and a white for a legendary creature, Halfling Peasant, 2/3 at rare. And it says, at the beginning of each end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, draw a card. This seemed like one of the better commanders out of...
This commander is good. I think this is a really cool commander. Plus, isn't it Sam's dad?
Yeah. Oh, you pointed out when we were talking about this that it's in the flavor text. It says, on the growing of vegetables, especially potatoes, Master Hamfast Gamgee was recognized as the leading authority by all in the neighborhood. So Samwise Gamgee's old man, I guess, or relative.
I think so. It's been a minute since I read the book, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Sam's dad.
Hamfast, that's awesome.
Yeah.
The art is so good. He's holding this little knobbly potato.
I've never seen a potato that looks like that, but you know, if he grew it, I'm sure it's delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I start? You want me to start talking about mine? Okay,
yeah,
sweet.
Yeah, we've each kind of pulled out not the whole deck list, just a few of the key cards and categorized them a little bit so that they're a little easier to talk about on the podcast. We will also be linking the full deck list in the show notes, in the description on YouTube. So take a look there if you're interested in the rest of the deck list.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll try to include some brief primers on them as well that cover some of the stuff that we talk about here and like some of the key cards in the deck and strategies. So the Gaffer, we just talked about him. We'll probably put him up on screen again here. Life gain deck, very obviously, right? It cares about gaining life each turn. So the strategies deck is to try to gain life each turn, not just on your own turn, but each turn try to gain enough life that we can keep drawing cards, generate value to try to reach our win conditions.
And was this your first life gain deck that you've built?
Yeah, I've never built a life gain deck. What I realized with this deck is while white is typically the color that we associate with life gain, I really think white-black is the life gain combination. So you do miss a lot of like really good life gain win conditions or key life gain pieces.
I think you miss a lot of life drain pieces in black.
Yes,
and that's
yes.
a lot of the ways that these life gain decks win is through the life drain that you get from black.
Yeah, for sure. Like a Sanguine Bond would have been
Yeah.
pretty sweet to put in this deck.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, all I get to do is gain life, which is actually pretty sweet because there's some good payoffs for that.
There are.
But
I don't think this deck is very weak. I think you're downplaying this deck. I think it would play pretty well at a casual table.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. Honestly, I think it did pretty well. So, so I have one category here for the cards in our category, and it is life gain. that is all we care about in this deck is life gain. But I have it split into some subcategories. So as I was playtesting this, the thing I realized is even though we want to gain life on each player's turn, right? Because we could potentially draw 4 cards a turn cycle. More often than not, this is going to play like drawing an extra card on our turn because we have life-linking attackers, right? And then people are not going to want to attack into us with those life-linking attackers because it's just going to draw us cards. So we have to kind of just swing out with those attackers to get value. So I tried to find as many, not as many because obviously we needed to have a solid curve here, but as many good life linkers that I could that had 3 power or more at a lower mana cost because we do have to gain 3 life. So one of the first ones here that I found is Intrepid Adversary.
Ooh, this is such a good card.
Such a good card. So it's 1 and a white. Creature, human, scout, 3/1 at Mythic. Has lifelink. And then when it enters the battlefield, you can pay 1 and a white. Oh my goodness, that's so much better than 2 and a white. I thought it was 2 and a white.
Yeah, it's 1 and a white. The other ones are, some of the other adversaries I think are 3 mana for like the extra thing that they do. This one is so much better.
That's so good. Yeah. Okay, sorry. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 1 and a white any number of times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, put that many Valor counters on Intrepid Adversary. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each Valor counter on Intrepid Adversary. So
okay, wait a minute. I have also misread this card. I thought it was other creatures you control get +1/+1. I have never noticed that it pumps itself, and I've definitely played this card wrong. I have this in a deck, and I have always only given the other creatures the Anthem effect.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't realize it said creatures either. In my playtesting even, I was like, cool, my other creatures are bigger now.
Yeah.
But no, that's really good. And I was doing it for 3 mana. This is way better than I even gave it credit for. Notably, though, it's even if you don't pump it, it's 2 mana for a 3/1. Which is really lifelinker, right? 3 power lifelink, which is really important because that means we can get this out on turn 2 and then play the Gaffer on turn 3 if we haven't ramped, or even just the turn before the Gaffer if we have ramped, and then immediately swing in, deal 3 damage, gain 3 life, draw a card at our end step.
And on turn 3, especially if you're early in the turn cycle, if you're the first or second player, you're going to be able to get in with this. Even if people have played like Mana Dorks, they're not going to want to trade their Mana Dorks to stop you from getting this online. So this is a really great early play, but such a great late play with the extra 1 and a white ability. especially in this deck, because you're going to tell us about some cards that have a bit of like a token go wide strategy, and this is just going to give them the extra damage that they need to win the game, to close out the game.
Yeah, it's super, super flexible, which I really like. It also is 2 mana for the base one, which, again, we talked about for as far as hitting your curve. But there are some other cards in this deck that care about that mana cost, and we're going to talk about another one here. Let me... I didn't put it in my list, but I want to now. I want to talk about it now because... sorry, let me go back to it. It is Extraction Specialist.
Oh, yeah.
Is another one that I have on this list. Extraction Specialist is 2 and a white for a creature human rogue at 3/2 with lifelink. So again, 3 power lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, return target creature with mana value 2 or less, intrepid adversary, anyone, from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature can't attack or block as long as you control Extraction Specialist, which is a downside, but it does come back and it can hit. But as you were saying too, people may not want to block it that early, may not be able to block it that early, but even if they do block it, they probably won't be able to block effectively, and so you basically get to remove their creature and still draw a card.
Yeah, because you still gain the life.
Because you still gain the life, which is really good.
It's great.
Yeah. And then the other one here is Lone Rider, which is another 2 mana
cool
one.
Card.
This one's so sweet. So it's 1 and a white for a 1/1 creature human knight with first strike and lifelink. And it's you might be saying it's a 1/1. Why? Like, that's not going to help you gain 3 life. Well, it says at the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, transform Lone Rider, and it transforms into It That Rides Is 1, which looks so cool and spooky. And it's a 4/4 with first strike, trample, and lifelink. We were talking today, this is a quick aside, about some of the art and style of recent sets becoming pretty campy and a little more cartoony. And that's kind of the nature of some of the sets and storybooky. This is a really cool... The backside of this especially, well, both of them are like really cool, dark, OG Magic art, which I love.
Yeah, the backside is crazy. So actually one thing I really like about the art on this too is I've never really noticed a ton before, but in Shadows over Innistrad, the transform symbol, if it's an Eldrazi on the backside, is like a little Emrakul or whatever. But it's like this freaky... the creature type is Eldrazi horror, and it's the rider and the horse have merged together to be like this one Eldrazi horror thing. It That Rides Is 1. It's cool.
Yeah, it's spooky. It's really cool. But the big thing here is that it's a 4/4 with first strike and lifelink. So first of all,
it's going to transform the turn that you play it because you're going to be gaining 3 life anyway.
Yeah, hopefully is the idea. And then the last one here I included, it is a pretty spicy card that we talked about this today that may not make it into this deck, depending on how we want it, how strong I want it to be. It's Serra Ascendant. It is a 1 mana creature human monk, 1/1 with lifelink. Just a little guy.
That's not bad.
Yeah, just a little guy. Who cares?
That's great.
Except that it says, as long as you have 30 or more life, Serra Ascendant gets +5/+5 and has flying.
Oh.
So that's a turn 1 6/6 flying lifelinker.
Yeah, and often way past turn 1 because you start with 40 and you are a life gain deck. You're going to be above 30 pretty much the whole game.
Oh, for sure. And if you get it out down turn 1, by turn 3, you're at 58 life.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. Yeah, so honestly, that was like, this is not the entire game plan, but especially in the early game, before you can hit some of these other pieces, I think having these small lifelinkers are going to be how you generate most of the value with the Gaffer, because I found this next strategy that I think is also very key to the deck, becomes kind of mana intensive, and you're not always going to be able to do it if you're wanting to cast some of the bigger creatures, and it's the instant speed life gain effects that turn into doubling as card draw spells sometimes. So these would be things like Revitalize, which is 1 and a white for an instant that says you gain 3 life, draw a card.
Draw 2 mana, gain 3 life, draw 2 cards.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
It's like a Night's Whisper that gains you life.
Yeah, that's crazy.
In white, which is really cool. And then Ritual of Rejuvenation, which is the same thing for 1 more mana, but you gain 4 life. But the key here being that you've attacked with a lifelinker on your turn, you've drawn the card on your turn, and now in another turn you can gain another 3 life and draw another card.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 I put in here are Candy Trail, which is one from a Wilds of Eldraine. It's 1 mana for an artifact food clue that when it enters the battlefield you scry to, and you can pay 2, tap it, and sacrifice it to gain 3 life and draw a card.
Is this the only food thing or food maker that you have in the deck right now?
Yes. I didn't lean super hard into food. I didn't lean super hard into food. Maybe I should have. Yeah. There's not a lot of repeatable food generation in white.
Yeah.
And so
white, it definitely relies on other colors for some of the food stuff, specifically green.
Yeah, exactly. So there wasn't a ton of... I feel like there was some food, but I didn't lean into it maybe as much as I could have. And you'll probably see why. And it's primarily because I was trying to get more creatures in.
Lifelinky creatures. That's how you're going to win the game. You're not going to win the game off of food. You're going to win the game off of the creatures.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not getting like any other benefit aside from like gaining life and drawing cards, and at the end of the day that's not going to like win you the game.
Yep.
But I did include a pretty on flavor food, which is Lembas.
So cool.
Which is sweet. So 2 mana, when it enters you scry 1 and draw a card. For an artifact food. When it enters you scry 1 and draw a card, and then you can pay 2 to tap and sacrifice it to gain 3 life. So basically just draw another card later.
That's sweet.
It's pretty fun.
It looks tasty too. It reminds me of like little shortbread cookies. I kind of want to. I'm kind of hungry for shortbread cookies now.
Yeah, I think like in Lord of the Rings, they like Lembas is supposed to taste really good, right? But it looks like hardtack, which is supposed to not taste very good, right? And then the last line on it is when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you shuffle it into your library. So you get to find it again later because Lembas satisfies you. 1 bite satisfies you for a day, right? Then the next strategy here was some more off-turn life gain at trying to be at instant, not necessarily at instant speed in the same way that these are and like draw effects. And some of these are stapled on creatures or other effects here. So the first one being Extort. There are other Extort effects. I kind of only included these 2 because they're the cheapest Extort effects. For those who don't know, Extort is whenever you cast a spell, you may pay black or white. And then if you do, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain that much life. So with 3 opponents out, you gain 3 life, which is the right amount you need to draw a card at your end step.
It's very good.
So the 2 here I included are Blind Obedience, which is an enchantment that has Extort, and artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped.
And this one has been reprinted recently in the Return to Ravnica or Ravnica Remastered. And if this isn't one that you've tried, you might want to try it. It's a very fun card to play.
Yeah, it's really good, and especially in white, where you may not... I mean, white tends to be pretty controlling and stacks-y, and I did want this specifically for its other effect in the deck as well, which is my deck doesn't go particularly fast, and so I need to slow everyone else down as well. And the other one here is Syndic of Tithes, which is just a 2 mana for a 2/2 with Extort. But now we're getting into some of the spicy off-turn life gain that I'm really excited about. We're going to talk about these in order of spice here. The first one, this one's not necessarily as spicy as the other 2, is Peace of Mind, which is 1 and a white for an enchantment. You pay a white, discard a card, gain 3 life, which is pretty good.
That's
good
cool.
hand shaping.
I've never seen this card before. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's really good hand shaping. This deck also has stuff like Alhemeret's Archive, which lets you shape your hand, which is really cool. You can only do it once per turn, obviously, so you're not like shaping your hand a ton.
With Alhemeret's Archive.
No, sorry, with
the Gaffer.
With the Gaffer, yeah, because with the Gaffer you're only drawing it at end step.
Yep.
But it can play really well with some of the other payoffs that we have later. The next one is a really spicy one that just got printed in Commander decks from March of the Machine, I'm imagining, based on this set symbol. It is Shattered Angel. It is 3 white for a creature Phyrexian Angel at 3/3. Flying. And it says, whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you may gain 3 life.
That goes so nuts in this deck.
Yeah, so hopefully you're attacking with a lifelinker on your turn, drawing a card, and then each player's turn, they're playing a land, you're gaining life, and drawing a card at the end step.
That's funny, because I have seen this card before, and I looked at it for some of the life gain decks that I have built. It has never seemed very good, but it is very good in the Gaffer.
Yeah, super good in the Gaffer. Yeah. I think it's definitely one of the pieces. This one and the next one are one of the pieces that you're actually looking for that can really be a great draw engine. A lot of this is one-off draw, but this one and the next one I'm going to talk about especially are very good at that. And the next one is Celestial Force. Celestial Force is 5 white for a 7/7 creature elemental that says at the beginning of each upkeep you gain 3 life. So same effect, except guaranteed at each upkeep, and it's on a big old body. Just trying to draw you a card. 4 cards a turn cycle, which is quite good.
Yeah. Yep. That's very good. That's cool. And I have to say that in Casual Commander, I have been coming back to some of the big spells, some of these 7, 8, 9 mana spells, because they do resolve in really low power Commander, and they are really fun, and it's how you win the game, and that's kind of fun. So I like that you added this in here. I love seeing an 8 mana spell with 3 white pips that is a 7/7 with no evasion, and it just works really well with your commander. I think that is such a fun include.
Yeah, it's just a big body that draws you cards. It does what something like Nezahal the Primal Tide does in a much higher power game, but in a lower power game, and it's just like a big body. And again, I like you said, I like that it has no evasion, so it's not like first of all, that's good for you because you can talk your way out of it being a threat potentially because you're like, look, you can just chump, like no problem, and it gets you a lot of value.
Yep, very cool.
So this brings us to how do we actually win the game? These effects are drawing us cards, right? We're trying and
gaining you life
and gaining you a lot of life. Yeah, don't forget that, and gaining a lot of life. But the point of gaining that life and drawing those cards is to reach some of these win conditions that are your life gain payoffs. It is nice that the Gaffer is a life gain payoff in the command zone, and drawing cards is a good payoff. But again, just drawing cards and spinning your wheels isn't what wins you games. And hopefully these win conditions do. And the first one being Valkyrie Harbinger. Valkyrie Harbinger is 4 white for a creature Angel Cleric at 4/5 with flying and lifelink, because we want that lifelink. But more importantly, at the beginning of each end step, if you gained 4 or more life this turn, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance.
An army of angels sounds pretty good.
Yeah, an army of flying vigilant angels is pretty solid.
Yeah.
This is very doable in this deck, especially because a lot of the stuff is gaining you only 3 life, but there are a fair amount of cards that are either doubling your life gain or adding 1 to your life gain, or
you can have 2 or more effects going on at the same time.
2 or more effects going on at the same time, exactly. So there's lots of ways to do this. Often you will be creating 1 on your turn during the turn cycle. You're not always guaranteed to create more than 1.
And that's enough for low power sometimes.
Absolutely.
It's flying and vigilance as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The next 2 are significantly more doable, and I think the most powerful ones in the deck. The first one being Gwei here, Greatest of the Eagles. I hope I said that name right. I got distracted saying that name and almost couldn't say Eagles at the end there. Gwei here, Greatest of the Eagles, is 4 and a white from Lord of the Rings. So on theme. Also, this art is so cool.
It's really cool. I can see how you got distracted because your eye probably caught the crown. And
it's
you just
so
looked
cool.
Straight at it.
Yeah, the Eagles are sweet. It's 4 and a white for a 5/5 flying legendary creature bird noble. That says whenever it attacks, target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn, which is already quite good. Mm-hmm. So it gives some of those life linkers evasion, which is really awesome because it doesn't have lifelink itself. But then it also says at the beginning of each end step, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, create a 3/3 white bird creature token with flying. And whenever this creature attacks, target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn, which is such a great flavor win because the Eagles are picking up these other attacking creatures and taking them into Mordor. It's so good.
It's cool.
But notably, the 3 life is a big thing there. That this deck is trying to gain 3 life a turn, and it's built to gain 3 life a turn. So if you are doing that, it's way more accessible to try to gain 3 to create the 3/3 Eagles, which is smaller than a 4/4, and they're not vigilant, but they also have some upside of making your other creatures evasive that may not be. And then the next one here, I think, is the best of all of these. Crested Sunmare, 3 white for a creature horse. Other horse at 5, it's a 5/5, and it says other horses you control have indestructible. Why does that matter? This is a life gain deck. We're not playing a horse typal deck. Well,
You are now.
you are now, because it says at the beginning of each end step, if you gained life this turn, create a 5/5 white horse creature token.
How much life, Spencer?
Any life. If you gained any life this turn, you create a 5/5 white horse creature token that has indestructible while Crested Sunmare is on the battlefield.
This card is insane.
It's so good. If someone board wipes and it's not an exile effect or a --/ effect, everything else dies and you keep all your horses.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I think it's really cool. Honestly, I'm really excited about this deck. These are just some of the key cards. There's obviously important things in here like removal, like ramp. One of the ramp pieces that I thought was kind of fun that I included in here, which goes in a lot of life gain decks, but was Pristine Talisman. Right? Pristine Talisman is 3 mana for an artifact, and it has tap, add 1 mana of any color, gain 1 life.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
That is
so
cool
can help you, and especially if you have things that are increasing your life gain, it does a lot of work in these decks. Some other notable cards would be things like Soul Warden or Soul's Attendant, which are small creatures that they're both 1 mana, they're both 1/1s, and they both say whenever another creature comes into play or enters the battlefield, I guess, comes into play is the old wording, enters the battlefield, you gain a life.
Sometimes that can get you the 3 life that you need all on its own if you have an opponent that's playing a token deck or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if 2 creatures entered and you have Pristine Talisman out, you just tap it, gain the 3rd life, draw a card. In my playtesting of this, it was really fun. Life gain really isn't my jam unless you're doing it like in black, so it's also like life drain.
Have we converted you though? Are you going to try this life gain deck?
Here's the thing. I actually think mono white has a lot of really fun and cool strategies and cool commanders, and I think the Gaffer is one of them. I think naturally I lean towards some of those more like Shadow Priest type vibes, which is why I really like the life drain stuff. It feels kind of like, like Macace the Unhallowed, like not that that's life gain, but that's like, I love that like dark stuff where it's like mixed with the Paladin stuff. Yeah, Orzhov stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really cool. And so I think I'd probably lean more towards something like that if I was building a life gain deck. That being said, I think white has a lot of cool stuff, and I think the Gaffer is a really good card. And even if you're not going to play it as a commander, it probably belongs in the 99 of any of your life gain strategies.
It's a cool card. Yeah, you did a great job building this deck. It looks really fun. I hope we get to play it soon. I'd love to play against it and see how it does.
Yeah, don't let me downplay it too much. I actually really, really enjoyed building this, and I really, really like it. It was a little out of my comfort zone, though, because I've never done any sort of life gain. I've never gained life ever in a game of Command. No, I'm just kidding.
Sure.
Yeah, no,
I know that's not true.
Yeah, but I really did like this one, and there's a lot of cool cards in here. There's some sweet spice, so check out the deck list, and then let me know what you think about it, because this was my first time kind of entering into the life gain realm.
Yeah, what did Spencer do wrong? Let us know.
Yeah, lots of stuff probably. Please.
What else would you include?
Yeah, please do tell. All right, Kelson, your turn. Let's hear about Grima.
Yeah, let me tell you about Grima. Like I said, I have had this deck for a while. It's been a pet deck of mine for a while, so maybe that's cheating. But I did rebuild it pretty much from the ground up. So there were only a few key cards that stayed the same. But I really rebuilt it to be more casual, to be more focused. So when I started working on it for the episode, it was around 260 decks on EDHRec. So it was like halfway to 500. And my previously built Grima deck was actually based out of an Ukima Stalking Shadow deck. I'll read that really quick. Ukima Stalking Shadow is 1 blue, black for a 2/2 legendary creature, Whale Wolf. And it partners with Khazar. I'll write Khazar here. I'll read it here in a minute. Ukima Stalking Shadow can't be blocked. And when it leaves the battlefield, it deals X damage to target player, and you gain X life, where X is its power. And Khazar is 3 and a green for a 3/3 human warrior. whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So that deck is built kind of like a unblockable tribal deck, and you're trying to get 1/1 counters on these creatures and then proliferate them. And so I had included Grima in the 99 as an unblockable creature that also had some upside to it. And every time I played the deck, the most fun thing that I did was get Grima out and spin the wheel off of Grima's ability. And so I was like, why don't I just build this as the deck? And one of the combos it was really focused on was playing Whispering Madness, which is 2 blue, black for a sorcery. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards discarded this way. You may recognize this very similar to Windfall, which was one of the cards that we covered last week when we talked about wheeling and wheel decks. And then it also has the ability Cipher. When you may exile the card encoded on a creature you control after you've resolved the spell, and then whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, its controller may cast a copy of the encoded card without paying its mana cost. So then every time Grima deals combat damage, and which is often because it can't be blocked, you get to do this effect again. So it was a wheel deck, and there were a bunch of payoffs like Turgid and Shieldred and things like that to wheeling. And so it was really a Grima wheel deck, and then it had some additional theft and instant and sorcery stuff in it. But I've rebuilt it. This is a new Grima, and it's more focused on those things that Grima actually wants to do, which is cast other people's instants and sorceries.
Yeah, I remember you talking about this when you built it. You went through, I feel like, several iterations, even when you built it the first time. We talked about this at length. And it did land, I think, at a spot that was pretty casual, but it was still also full of a lot of Dimir good stuff.
It was not very focused. It just ended up being Dimir good stuff.
Yeah, and it also had, it still had, you still were trying to do Grima stuff, but it did end up, I feel like, being play Whispering Madness, encode it on Grima, get in for damage with Grima, and hopefully have out something like Turgid or Orcish Bowmasters to ping the table down.
Yeah.
Which was really good, but also made Grima like a big target. And I feel like I haven't seen this version yet, but I'm wondering if you think this version makes Grima less of a target because it doesn't have that type of explosive. Because there's times you politicked me away from removing Grima, and the next turn you did 21 damage and made a 21-21 off of Orcish Bowmasters, and I was like, okay, never again.
Yeah, and that was also a problem for how the deck was built. It was built as a casual deck. And those kinds of interactions can feel really bad to casual players, especially if they're newer players. So this was the deck that I would frequently play with newer players, and it became very overwhelming for them. So this is a more casual version where Grima is a lot less scary, and that's part of why I think this particular deck is a fun one to play. So some reasons why I think you should play Grima, and I'll go to a couple reasons why you shouldn't play Grima as well. But why you should play Grima, it's a very political deck, which I think is very fun. I really like the politicking that happens in Commander, and I like that it feels like how the character Grima should play. It's how Grima's character is in the book and in the movies.
Yeah, well, when you mentioned that you had taken Whispering Madness out, I texted you and I was like,
I know,
Kelton, I feel like you should leave that in there because Grima is literally Whispering Madness into Theoden's ear, right?
Yeah, that might be a good enough reason to put it back in the deck.
I feel like it's a pretty good flavor win.
Includes in the deck, and that might be one of them.
For sure, and it could potentially be like I don't know about a win condition, but like I don't know. I guess that it will be seen as you tell us about the deck a little bit.
Yeah, and another reason why I think you should play Grima really quick is just it's fun to spin the wheel. It's really fun to just hit somebody and then just start exiling cards off the top of your library, and the whole table begins to get involved. We're like, oh, what's it going to be? Is it this one? Is it this one? And then when a big spell flips over, everyone goes, oh no, it's it's a board wipe, whatever it is, and that's pretty fun. So,
especially if you're hoping it's a board wipe, especially if someone's way ahead and you're like, oh my goodness, please hit something good.
I'm going to come to that. That's part of the strategy for this deck, actually.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, and really quickly before we jump into that, though, a couple of problems with Grima that I have noticed from playing it quite a bit is that people don't love having their spells played by their opponents. This is actually something that I don't really get. It's the same thing to me of when players get upset when you make them mill, and they're like, they see the cards go into their graveyard and they're like, oh man, I would have drawn that card. It would have been so good. Your deck is randomized. Like there was no guarantee unless you tutored or something that card was going to be on the top of your library. So it's always funny to me when people get upset about that. And but people are similarly get upset about having their spells played against them. So that is one thing to keep in mind if you're going to be playing this deck.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is a kind of a silly thing to get upset about. I do think there's some truth to the fact that you now know that your deck doesn't have like the information that you have. Exactly. Yeah. Like if I needed to draw some sort of removal to deal with something you have on board, and you hit it off the top with Grima, I'll cast
it for you. I got you covered.
Right. Exactly. Thank you. You'll cast it for me, and I unfortunately won't be able to choose the targets.
Yeah.
So I think there's something to be said about that. I think. Especially,
I think that is very true, and it comes down to knowing your play group. Just know if the players in your play group would not enjoy that play experience of you playing their cards, then probably don't choose this commander.
Yeah, or tell them to grow up and play commander.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's dive into the strategy. Generally, it's just start slinging spells and see what happens. That's kind of what the deck is doing. You're going to really want to ramp on 2 and play Grima on 3 since he is kind of part of the value engine, and you want to start getting those triggers as early as possible. But similar to what you said, Spencer, start politicking really early and establish yourself as a friend of the table. So this is where you say things like, oh, are we worried about that? Maybe I can hit a removal spell, right? Or oh, I hit a board wipe. Should I play it? Do we want a board wipe right now? Or I really need to ramp. So like whose deck is going to give me the best chance at ramping?
That one's maybe not going to gain you very many friends.
No, but you should make one thing I found works really well with Grima and makes it very fun is to like talk to the table about the spells that you're casting,
like
or
think
who
out
you're
loud.
attacking. Think out loud, and also be like, "Oh, I hit you this time, but I think you have really cool big spells in your deck, so I'm going to swing it at you." And like, just make it feel very casual because it is, and that's part of the fun of Grima.
Even if it's not casual, even if you're trying to maximize your Grima value,
your efficiency. Yeah. Yeah. So try and fly under the radar until you can find a big payoff. And then the goal in the end is to win with tokens or one of your big spells, and we'll cover some of the big spells here in a minute. So let's talk about some of the payoffs for just casting spells. You're going to be casting a lot of spells, mostly out of other people's decks. There are quite a few instants and sorceries in this deck as well. So the biggest payoffs are probably the token makers. And so these are cards like Dika, Fractal Theorist. This is 4 and a blue for a 3/3 human wizard. It has Magecraft, so whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you get to create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, and then you put X/1/1 counters on it, where X is that spell's mana value. It also has an activated ability, 3 and a blue, target creature token can't be blocked this turn. I actually forgot it had that, because really mostly what we care about is just creating really big and a lot of creature tokens. A similar one is Lord of the Nazgul, which comes from Lord of the Rings, which is very fun. This is 3 blue black for a 4/3 Wraith Noble. Wraith is actually relevant here. Keep that in mind. It has flying, and Wraiths you control have protection from ring bearers. And then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you create a 3/3 black Wraith creature token with Menace. And then if you control 9 or more Wraiths you control have base power and toughness 9/9 until end of turn.
That's good. It's really good.
It'll probably come up rarely. Mostly you're just making 3/3s with Menace. That's really good. But if you can make 8 more of them, besides Lord of the Nazgul itself being a Wraith, they become 9/9s with Menace, and that's really good.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
As you were reading that, and I was contemplating that your deck is caring about casting instant sorcery, some of these, or 2 of these so far.
Yep.
I was remembering that Grima lets you cast the spell off the top for free. That is crazy.
Yeah, that's why this deck is awesome.
That's so good. That's so much value for just getting in for 1 damage, which you're guaranteed to do because he's unblockable.
I think you're likely going to be able to cast something like 75% of the spells that you end up exiling with Grima. Not all of them are going to be good. Some are going to be board wipes, and you're going to be ahead on board. You're not going to want a board wipe. But in general, you're going to probably cast about 75% of the spells that you exile, which is super cool. The next token maker, the last one here is Shark Typhoon, which is an enchantment for 4 or for 5 in a blue. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is that spell's mana value.
They totally wussed out on calling this Sharknado.
Yeah,
They could have.
I don't
done,
know. Could they have? Would they've gotten in trouble?
Look at all the secret layers they're doing.
That's
they
true.
just call up the producers and say, hey, listen, we want to name this card Sharknado. We will add a Circle C or a TM to the end, whatever you want.
Yeah, it's a sweet card, though. It's a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, very, very cool.
I have gone off with this card in Grima before, and it is extremely satisfying.
It's really good. It's like, I've watched you do it. You came back from a game that you were pretty behind by just getting this out and casting either draw spells to refill your hand or removal to keep the person who was ahead behind, and it did really, really well.
Turns out flying sharks are pretty good.
Yeah.
The last payoff for casting spells that I've included on the list is Archmage Emeritus. This is 2 blue for a 2/2 human wizard. With Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. So this is going to keep you drawing more of your spells to be able to play, so you can keep on getting value, which is pretty sweet.
Nice.
So we have great payoffs for casting spells. Now we just want to cast more spells. So how do we cast or copy the spells that we are casting? And the first one is going to be Mercurial Spelldancer, which is actually, I think, a really fun include for the deck, which has a lot of the same flavors as Grima. So it's 1 in a blue for a 2/1 Phyrexian Rogue. It can't be blocked, so already feels a little bit like Grima. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put an oil counter on Mercurial Spelldancer. That's a little hard to say. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may remove 2 oil counters from it. And if you do, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy.
You've played this. This was in your previous Grima build.
It was. This was one of the ones that made the switch.
This is really good. This is really good, and because 70% of the time you're gonna hit something good with Grima, right? And you get to copy it for free. In the times that you don't have to cast it, and it just says the next one you cast this turn, so you could cast an instant or sorcery from your hand and still double the value on that.
Yeah, and you can stack this however you want. If you want to wait and see. If you know you don't want to double the one off of Grima, then you can stack the Grima trigger to resolve first, and then resolve this one.
Interesting. Yeah. If you know what you're gonna hit off of Grima, I guess, right? There
are a few ways in this deck to do that too. So.
Oh, awesome. Okay, we'll keep going. I'm excited.
Okay, so another way to cast more spells is to make copies of Grima. Then you're getting multiple Grima triggers. So a couple that I wanted to include to just talk about right here are Irenicus's Vile Duplication and Quantum Misalignment. I wanted to talk about them specifically because they are both instants and sorceries themselves. So Irenicus's Vile Duplication is 3 in a blue for a sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except the token has flying and isn't legendary if that creature is legendary. This is pretty common in Commander. I think it makes sense why it would be good to copy Grima, because then you're able to attack the same player twice, different players. You're just getting 2 free spells each turn, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And they're instants and sorceries, which your deck obviously cares about.
And you can copy with Mercurial Spelldancer, so you get another copy of Grima.
Oh
which
my
is pretty
gosh,
cool.
that's so good.
Yeah, and then the other one that I wanted to talk about was Quantum Misalignment. I haven't seen this played very broadly yet, so I think this might potentially be a little undervalued. It's 4 in a blue for a sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it isn't legendary. And then it has Rebound. So if you cast it from your hand, you exile it as it resolves. And at the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast it from exile without paying its mana cost.
Oh, very cool. 1 more mana to be able to cast Irenicus's Vile Duplication
Yeah,
twice.
we already cast Irenicus's Vile Duplication for 4 mana. And for 5 mana, you cast it twice.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. It slows you down a turn to casting this most times, but what's a turn in casual Commander, right?
Yeah.
That's really, really good.
I think it's pretty good. 2 more ways to cast more spells. The first one, such a classic. It's Fire Shrieker. This is 3 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has double strike, and the equip cost is 2.
Yeah, this is one that, again, in your original Grima build, if Fire Shrieker came down and Grima was down, I was pretty hell-bent on trying to get rid of Grima. Even in the face, we lost a game against our friends at La Polani deck.
Yeah.
because Grima hit the floor with a Fire Shrieker, and I was like, no way. No way is this happening.
You used your removal on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of
Alapalani.
Yeah.
Who had out egg tokens, I'm pretty sure.
Yep. Yep. It's fun. It's very fun to get double the triggers. And then the last one I want to talk about to cast more spells is River Song's Diary. This is another fun one from Doctor Who. 3 mana for an artifact. It has imprint. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell from their hand, exile it instead of putting it into a graveyard as it resolves. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more cards exiled with River Song's Diary, choose one of them at random. You may cast it without paying its mana cost.
Whoa.
So all of your opponent's instants and sorceries get put under this as after they cast them, and then when at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more, you just roll a die, choose one at random, and you get to cast that one for free.
That's really good.
It's fun.
I know we're playing in casual pods with this, but it's also like a pretty relevant stacks piece for decks that want to like flashback spells or want to, cast them from their graveyard. That's pretty cool. So it like kind of serves a double duty there for some graveyard hate and giving you some additional value off of other people's spells, which is pretty sweet.
It does. And it's a May trigger. You don't have to cast it, which is nice as well.
Oh, yeah, sure. So if you
hit a board wipe.
Yeah, you get to, that's really cool.
Yeah. All right, that is that from that section. The next section I want to talk about is borrowing people's cards. The first one I think is a very fun
with asking, right? You
card.
ask them first.
So borrowing people's cards. So the first one is Nascent Metamorph. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/1 shapeshifter. When it attacks or blocks, target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card, and then it becomes a copy of that card until end of turn. And then they put all the rest of the cards on the bottom of their library in a random order. So this is really fun. It doesn't actually steal their card. It just it does borrow the creature for a turn.
Yeah.
Which is fun, especially if you're playing against a deck that has big creatures. If
that's
you're playing against the Dragon, this is a 2 mana, potential 8 mana dragon that you're playing, which is fun.
Really high ceiling.
Yeah.
And then also like really low floor as well.
Sure, because if you whiff and then it's like a 1/1 still, when it attacks, they can just block it and kill it. But I think it's fun. This is the kind of card that I want to play in a casual game that I can't play in other games. But it's very fun and splashy in a casual game.
For sure, and I like that it triggers off of blocking as well, because
it just incentivizes attacking.
Yeah, it has potential for blowouts, especially if someone knows like what's on top of their deck.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, the next one in this category is Bribery. Classic magic card, 3 blue for a sorcery. You search target opponent's library for a creature card, put it onto the battlefield under your control, then they shuffle their library.
This is so good.
You just get the best creature in their deck.
I should have bought this when it was at $4. I'm so sad I didn't.
It has started to go up, but how good does it feel in this deck? It's just a great flavor win and does exactly what Grima's trying to do, which is fun.
Yeah, well, it's nice because you get to choose, which you typically aren't doing in Grima, and it's hitting a creature, which I know that Grima's generating creatures off of some of these payoffs and whatever, but I feel like that's the part that you're mostly worried about in Grima is like you're hoping probably to hit removal or some sort of value piece off of the top of people's libraries because for the most part you have like Grima and something else that's kind of dinky, right?
Yeah.
So
there's not a ton of creatures in this deck. It's like 17 creatures.
Yeah.
Also, this is a sorcery. So it triggers all of your other cares about sorceries, and you can copy it, which is really cool.
So you get a 5/5 shark, you get a 5/5
fractal.
You get a 5/5 fractal, and then you get to do it again.
And then I get Toxtril the Corrosive.
You get Toxtril the Corrosive.
Okay, and then the last one, this was one that I found while I was researching this deck. Actually, I've never seen it played before. I've never played it, but I think the flavor is really fun. It's Fumble. Have you ever played this card before?
No.
Okay, Fumble is 1 and a blue for an instant. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Gain control of all auras and equipment that were attached to it, then attach them to another creature.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I take the back. I have seen this like once, but I immediately forgot about it. This is amazing.
It's really fun, and I'll tell you why I think it's really good in Grima. I think there's a version of Grima that you could build that's a Voltron deck. I think you could build it with like Blackblade Reforged because he's unblockable, and you could just deal a ton of combat damage. So if you are playing against a Voltron deck, all of a sudden you're turning Grima into their Voltron commander, and it's unblockable, which is really cool. But honestly, there are so many times when there's just a pair of boots on the table that you're going to be able to steal with this, and that's a great value. For 2 mana, you're bouncing their creature and stealing a pair of boots and equipping them for free. That's totally worth it, and I think that the card is flexible enough, and that you're going to see like one equipment on the battlefield at some point. It's worth playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And by pair of boots, you mean any other boots besides Swiftfoot boots or Lightning Greaves, right?
Oh yeah, because I can't target the
Because
creature.
you can't
I can only
target
the Okay, swords. How about a sword?
Swords.
Can we get a sword?
Swords. Well, what I was going to ask, is there a world where you have copied Grima with Erraticus Violence duplication? Someone tries to remove your original copy of Grima that has Fire Shrieker attached, and you bounce it to your hand and put the equipment on the copy?
That does sound like something I would do.
That's pretty. I feel like that's cool. It's got some flexibility to it. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, and it can save your own creature from removal, which is good too. Okay. I did include a short list of flavor cards here. Cards that are mostly just included in the deck for flavor purposes. Yes, please. The first one is Witch King of Angmar. It does have some pretty good utility in this deck. So this is 3 black for a 5/3 Wraith Noble with flying. Whenever one or more creatures deal combat damage to you, each opponent sacrifices a creature that dealt damage to you this turn. The ring tempts you. And then you discard a card, and it gains indestructible until end of turn, and you tap it. Because there aren't very many creatures in this deck, and you're almost never going to want to block with Grima, because you're trying to attack with Grima every turn, you're open to attacks. This heavily disincentivizes people from attacking you. Because if they attack you, they have to attack you with 2 things, and then you can block one of them with Witch King, give it indestructible, and then the other one deals combat damage to you, and they have to sacrifice it.
And yeah. I was gonna say, but even if they both get through, but it says a creature. I thought it was each creature, which is
it's
disgusting.
Just a creature.
Yeah.
But one thing that is really important about this card is it does trigger the ring tempting you, and I think the ring tempting you is actually pretty good in this deck, because if you can get to the 4th level of ring tempting, then every time Grima attacks and deals combat damage because it's unblockable, each opponent loses 3 life, and that I think is a win condition in the deck.
Yeah, that's really, really good, and just another huge flavor win. But like a relevant flavor win. It's not like you're just throwing this in here because the theme is Lord of the Rings. It fits in. It's a piece that fits in the puzzle of the Grima deck.
The next one is mostly just a flavor and doesn't really contribute to the strategy of the deck. It is Palantir of Orthonk. It's 3 mana for a legendary artifact. Oh my gosh, there's so much text on this card. On your end step, you put an influence counter on it, then you scry 2. And then you choose an opponent, and they can let you draw a card, but if not, you mill X cards, where X is the number of influence counters on it, and they lose life equal to the total mana value of those cards. This is in the art for Grima. It should be in the deck.
Yeah. I feel like that is a good flavor win. It's not irrelevant, though. Like it's
a good card.
It's a good card.
Yeah, it's a lot better in 2-player. It's less good in Commander, but
yeah, sure,
because
it's target card. Player. Yeah, absolutely. And you're not in a mill deck necessarily, so you don't care about it, but. Yeah, still a cool card, though. And it's Grima Wormtongue. He's around that Palantir.
Yes, he is. Okay, and then the last one is quite good in the deck as well for similar reasons to the Witch King. This is 1 and a black for an enchantment. It's Call of the Ring. At the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you. Whenever you choose a creature as your ring bearer, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. We talked for a little while when this card first came out. We compared it to Phyrexian Arena. Is it better than Phyrexian Arena? In this deck, it probably is, because you want the ring to be tempting you. You want to get to that 4th level. And it's just a source of card draw, which is great.
Yeah, it starts 1 turn. It costs 1 more life. You have to have a creature on board.
Yep.
But it's also 1 less mana, so it comes online sooner. So I think it's really, really good. And again,
and the ring tempts you.
Which is relevant in, I would argue, any deck, because the ring tempting you does give you value, but especially in this deck. When it attacks, right? It doesn't even have to deal damage.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so good.
All right. That moves us along to our big finishers. So how do you actually close out the game with this deck? There are a few cards that let you borrow your opponent's cards and lets you win the game with them. The first one is Rise of the Dark Realms. This is 7 black. So once again, these are your big spells. In casual, they're probably going to resolve more often than at higher power levels, but when they do resolve, which they may not, and that's okay, you're probably going to win the game. So this is 7 black for a sorcery. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. You're just gonna borrow them for a minute.
Yeah, borrow. I was gonna say borrow permanently, but you're actually not, like, in real life.
Because once they die, then they go back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, once you kill them with their creatures, they get them back. Yeah.
Yep, and this next one is similar. It's Breach the Multiverse. It's 5 black for a sorcery. Each player mills 10 cards. Then for each player, you choose a creature or a planeswalker card in their graveyard. You put them onto the battlefield under your control. Then each creature you control becomes a Phyrexian in addition to its other types.
Another one I should have bought when it was like $1.
Yeah.
It's a really good card. I think people really underestimated how good this one is, and it's like in just
7 mana is castable.
It is, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the last one is also a pet card of mine. This is Thieving Amalgam. This is 5 black for an Ape Snake. It's a 6/7, and at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, manifest the top card of that player's library. And then whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life.
That's awesome. That's really, really good.
You just get a 2/2 every one of your opponent's turns.
You've talked about
for life.
Yeah, you've talked about this being one that you is like kind of a pet card of yours.
Yeah, I've built it in budget decks before, and it granted when I did, it was like 25 cents. It's now like $1.25. I think people are realizing this is actually a pretty fun card to play. It just overperforms. You're just getting 6 mana or 6 worth of power every turn cycle, and then it's draining for potentially 6 life every turn cycle, which is cool.
Yeah, that's really good. And like, if anyone played Murders at Karlov Manor Limited, like there's a real possibility that you hit actually kind of a bomb and you can turn it face up for its mana cost as well. Yeah, which is really good.
As long as it's in blue or black, it doesn't change the kind of mana that you can use to cast.
Oh, sure, yeah.
All right. Well, the last thing that I wanted to include were just 3 of my favorite cards from the deck. What are the cards that I think are the most fun to play, have the best flavor? The first one is Auton Soldier. So this is another Doctor Who card. I didn't realize how many Doctor Who cards I put in here, but they're pretty fun for this deck. 4 blue for a 0/0 artifact creature, Alien Soldier. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it isn't legendary, is an artifact in addition to its other types, and has Myriad. For those who don't remember what Myriad is, whenever it attacks for each opponent other than defending player, you may put a token that's a copy of this creature onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control, then you exile the tokens at the end of combat. So you have Grima, you play this, you get another Grima, and then when you attack with both of these, this one makes 2 more Grimas.
That are also not legendary.
Yeah, so you have 4 Grimas after playing this card and attacking.
Yep, that's very, very good.
Yeah.
That's really, really good. Fortunately, it's 6 mana, so hopefully once this hits, someone can say, board wipe, remove all Grimas.
Get rid of it.
Warning.
Warning, Grima alert.
Grima alert.
Okay, and then the second one of my favorite cards from this deck is Synthesis Pod.
This is such a good one.
A very fun card to play. It is weird. So it's 3 and a Phyrexian blue mana, so it can be paid for 3 and 2 life or 3 and a blue mana. It is an artifact. It has the activated ability 1 and a Phyrexian blue mana, so that's either 1 and a blue or 1 and 2 life. You tap it, and then you exile a spell you control. Target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a card with mana value equal to 1 plus the exiled spell's mana value. Exile that card, then that player shuffles. You may cast that exiled card without paying its mana cost. So the way this plays is you attack with Grima. You get a free spell. If it's a spell that you don't like, you can pay 2 mana or 1 mana and 2 life to exile that spell and then choose any of your opponents to exchange the spell for a different card that has mana value equal to 1 plus the other spell's mana value. So it can turn an instant or sorcery into a big creature or another bigger spell or an artifact or something like that. It's really fun to play.
It's really, really fun. And I never really understood how fun it was until one time I got it somehow. I don't know how I
stole it.
I don't know how I stole it even. I can't remember what I played to steal it.
It might have been a Phyrexian Metamorph.
No, because I was playing my Faldor, my Gruul Faldor deck.
Yes, you were, because it went off because it cares about casting spells from exile.
Yes, it was awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to tell a story really quick because I thought it was really fun. I was playing Squee the Immortal, which is 1 red for a 2/1 goblin, and you can cast it from your graveyard or exile. So each turn, I was casting Squee from exile, and then synthesis potting, exiling it again, and getting a 4-mana spell from any of my opponents. It was really fun.
It was really cool. And getting 2 wolves.
And getting 2 wolves, right, because it cared about casting stuff from exile, which was really cool. It made me really happy, and I never, ever, ever questioned why this is in a deck ever again. It was really fun.
It's really fun. And it will trigger for things that create tokens from casting instants or sorceries. This will let you get the token off of casting the spell from Grima, and then another one from getting this from casting it off of this.
Right, because
so
you have to exile it from the stack. It's a spell that you've cast.
Yep. It's after cast.
Wow, that's so good.
It's really cool. The last of my favorite cards that I wanted to mention here is one that I've started to play in even more of my decks, though it does fit into the theme here, and that is Exchange of Words. This is 1 blue for an enchantment. Spencer loves this card.
Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
The 1 blue for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose 2 target creatures. For as long as Exchange of Words remains on the battlefield, exchange the text boxes of those creatures. This is from Unfinity, but it is legal to play.
Ugh. I know people like this. I know people like that they made playable cards in Unfinity. I think it's silly. I do think this is fun. Like, don't get me wrong. This is
I have
fun.
won games off of this before.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm not just salty because the one time I've seen you cast it, you replaced a 1/1 with the text box of my Toxrill the Corrosive.
Sure.
I'm not salty about that. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I think genuinely I don't know why I don't like that they did this. It kind of added a weird silliness to the Okay, have you seen I'm going to check out Tolarian Community College. They're awesome. They make great content. Have you seen the video recently that they did?
No.
It's ex-pros, and they might be current pros too, playing Commander with the professor.
Yes, I actually have seen that one.
Someone plays Blank Goblin, which is a goblin that lets you choose something from
Name
a sticker
Goblin.
sheet. Yeah. Sorry, what?
Isn't it Name Sticker Goblin? Isn't that what they call it? It is Blank Goblin.
It is Blank Goblin. They might call it Name Sticker. Yeah, I don't know what the actual name of the card is, but they're talking about it, and the pros are just like, "What is this? I hate this." And one of them,
don't they make them actually put the sticker on the card or whatever?
I didn't get to that part, but my favorite part is that one of them looks at the other one and says, "If you had a counterspell and you didn't counter this, I will never forgive you."
Yeah. Yeah, that is a silly card. It is actually such a good red ritual.
Yeah, they play in CDH. It's very, very good. But I also, I don't know. I'm in camp. Don't make unsets legal. But
yep. This is a great card.
It's a sweet card, though. It does.
It does.
The thing is it like punches above its weight like a lot.
Yeah.
You know
it does.
mean?
And it's also like pseudo removal. If the thing causing you issues is the text box of a creature, you can flip it over to your side and it just totally changes the game. One of the times I've won with this is I had, after an Orcish Bowmasters, I had like a 21-21 or something like that, or 22-22. And I just swapped the text boxes with a flyer and then swung in for lethal against the last remaining player on the table.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, all of the other spells that are like that gain you control of other creatures are either temporary or they're like an enchant, like an aura that enchants the creature.
It's like 5 mana.
Yeah, usually. It's like really expensive, and this is 3 mana to get the creature, and then someone has to waste the removal on like your dinky 1/1 that just has like all of these abilities or whatever, you know?
Yeah, and it doesn't switch the text boxes back after that creature dies.
Right.
It's like the enchantment has to die.
Yeah, so it's like both removal and it's really, really good.
Yeah.
So play it, but not with me.
It's a great card.
It's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for listening to my Grima deck. I think it's really fun to play. It's a great one that people should give a chance. It's quite underplayed. It's a good casual deck. It's not trying too hard to win. It can, but most of the time I just have a lot of fun spinning the wheel and seeing what spell I hit off of my opponent's deck.
Yeah, I really like this adjustment to it because, like you said, the previous iteration was pretty strong for the intent of wanting to play this with new players. I do feel like this iteration, like that's, I guess it's yet to be seen because we haven't actually like been able to play it yet. I think it'll be cool because it'll help new players see, oh, here's what the type of thing I can be doing. Because that is something that's hard to know when you're first getting into Magic is what strategies are even available. And this one's kind of honestly off the rails enough that it's like, oh, I can do any of these
weird
things.
Stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed listening to our brews of Grima, Sauron's Footman, and the Gaffer. We're considering, like Kelton said, we have some of these that we have tucked away for if we want to do this thing in the future. So please let us know if you enjoyed this, if this was a good format for, if you liked these type of deck techs for Underplayed Commanders or deck techs in general. That's something we've been considering doing on the channel more. Building a deck maybe synchronously together as on an episode, I think is something we've considered doing. So please let us know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in listening to. Thank you so much for tuning in. We just love you guys. We felt so much support. It has been just so amazing to see the discourse even about Typal and Kindred decks. It's just been really fun to see people interacting with the content that we're putting out. And we've been blown away at the rate that everyone has engaged with it and supported us. So thank you. This is something we plan on continuing to do, support or not, and it is so much more fun to build a community with all of you doing this. So thank you so much for listening. You can check us out on YouTube. You're hopefully wherever you're seeing this, but we're also on Spotify. Both of those places, you're listening on one of them. Those are the only two places we released. You can get a hold of us in the comments. Comment if there's anything you'd like us to change, like us to fix. Subscribe, please. Like and subscribe. That really helps us out a ton.
And we are working also, some of the comments we've seen are around a new layout that can show the cards more permanently while we're talking about them. We're working on that right now. So thank you so much for the feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just lip service when we're replying to your comments about this. We're always talking about how we can make this better. We both work full time, so this is really like a fun thing we do on the side, and so please bear with us as we try to make some of these improvements because we are also busy people trying to put out just fun content. So again, thank you for all the feedback. Like I said, check us out YouTube, Spotify, like and subscribe, all of that jazz. You can find us at the Commander Pod. Soon we'll have some things there, links to our Mox fields. We're going to be trying to update that website as well. Again, thank you so much for all the support. Thank you for tuning in this week. Make sure to tune in next week, and remember to always pay the one.